Okay, welcome back. I have a something for my throat. So basically, what we talked about previously was we toured the globe from the Bruns and all book, which is very interesting, I think. And perhaps also very helpful for you to see how to use social media, what social media is good for to use when it comes to inciting agency, which is particularly what you're going to do in your group work. We talked about my own studies on Asputin and the article I wrote together with Christina, Judith, and Alexander, where we particularly highlight. This could be. You have to make your suggestions in the group work theoretically grounded. And here we have very good suggestions which you can use. The importance of a strong other in order to incite actions. Here, in terms of, that identity is important for action in this article. The vagueness of the us. Do not make the us too specific if you want to generate a lot of actions across different groups, as well as these certain types of action frames, the ordinary people against the corrupt politician, the left versus the right, are these type of motivation frames or action frames that seems to be good for enticing actions. What Christina and I then did was that we continued on this work in order to look at different types of activists. What types of activist identification could we then see in our material? And here we focus on, we depart from a radical democratic perspective, namely Chantal Mouffe's, which will be in Stockholm, but it's apparently sold out. Duh. 3rd of May, but maybe there will be tickets, so go if you can to see her. Anyway, we depart from a radical democratic perspective, especially Chantal Mouffe's delineation between antagonism and agonism. In radical democracy, conflict is very important. But the conflict here, the enemy is important in order to highlight conflicting lines in a society. Therefore, the enemy should not be eliminated, because if there is no enemy, there is no... then the conflicting lines in the society will be erased. So we have to, in a sense, cherish the enemy. And this is what she called agonism. You should respect the enemy, or in other terms, we use the term adversary for the other who is respected, and enemy for the other who is to be eliminated, so to speak. So this is one way to look to one axis in our typology. The other axis is something that we draw upon from our empirical materials. So it's not as theoretically grounded, even though you can in some Melucci accounts connected to theory. And that's the difference between so-called militants or activists who are ready to act in civil disobedience and those who are not. And we could see it in Dresden, in Leipzig, for example, the church people who wanted to stay in the confinities of the law, so to speak, whereas the Antifascist Action or Rotes Oktober, they wanted to act in civil disobedience. We also had that in Stockholm, very clear dividing lines here. So then we have two axes, out of which we can then make a typology of activists, which is what we do in this article. So if we look here in the corner here, starting here, so we have the ones who do conceive of their enemy, of the other as an enemy to be eliminated, you say? Oh God, I cannot even speak English anymore. To be destroyed. But is not ready to act in civil disobedience. I think trolls are part, well, maybe not trolling, but some form of net hatred that are in the confines of the law could be part of this. We call it the saloon activist, or the armchair activist, in that sense, that um, that doesn't leave the home in that sense, are not ready to act in civil disobedience, even though you can act in civil disobedience online as well, but still wants to destroy the enemy. The ones who are ready to act in civil disobedience and do not have any pardon with the other and sees it as an enemy, we call the contentious activist. I mean, in the case of Leipzig and Dresden, once again, the I mean, the anti-fascist action and the neo-Nazis, I mean, they were not to be respected. I mean, they were to be destroyed, and they were ready to act in this civil disobedience to this. And of course, there is hacktivism, hackers, which is illegal, which also would fall into this typology. Then we have what we call the law-abiding activist, who is viewing the other as an adversary to discuss with, to talk to, and is not ready to act in civil disobedience. I mean, we have the more calm elements in Stockholm, for example, inviting politicians to talk to them. Okay, you don't want us. You want land to build houses and kindergarten. Why not build it here instead? So viewing the enemy as someone to discuss with here, or the others as someone to discuss with, and not engaging in civil disobedience. And then, of course, come the final one, the ones who do act in civil disobedience, but still see their enemy as an adversary. And this is, of course, an ideal type here. I mean, there are not many of these, but Gandhi, of course, was one of them. So yeah, I mean, this is an interesting typology. We have got some interest in it, and perhaps we should continue working on it. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what you think about it. Finally, then, before we not focus on me, stop the focus on me, we're going to talk about this article on activist capitals. And why I include this is because it deals with power, and power is indeed one of the central concepts that we are going to talk about in this course. Therefore, I included this. So the question here is that I ask is, because studying the Aspert and Bathhouse course, I could see that there were clear power relations within the group. So they were fighting. So they were not equals in this Aspert and Bathhouse. There were clear dividing lines. So I started to be interested in power relations within the group. And here is a particular form of power I'm interested in. I call it networking power, by reference to Castells and Fuchs and others, which means being in a position or being positioned in a network to exert influence by setting the agenda, defining the reality, getting attention for the information you spread. And I think this getting attention, the recognition, especially online where there's so much buzz and going around, is getting increasingly hard to get heard. This is a core concept here, the recognition one. And in order to study this, I turned to French sociologists, anthropologists, philosophers, such as Bourdieu. And I consider activists, I view them as forming a social field, which is one of his concepts, in which positions are negotiated through interactions between specific values, the activist habitus, and capitals. So I use a kind of a Bourdieu-inspired analytical apparatus to study power here. Now, there are two positions that I'm interested in to make this easier. What positions here? Well, core and periphery positions. So the power, and this is the relation, the two positions, the power relations I'm interested in here. The one who, and this turned out to be very much delineated against the ones who engaged others and the ones who were engaged by others. For example, I interviewed one of the core activists in Aspen and Bathhouse, and she told me, and I asked her if she got any information on the Facebook group, and then she said, "Well, didn't get any information on the Facebook group. I gave information there, clearly delineating that she was the one who were engaging others. She was not engaged by others. So this is how I view the difference between core and periphery positions. So what are the field-specific values? In the Aspen and Bathhouse community, there is a value of location-bound community. You can read the article, but in the neighborhood in Aspen, it was very much focused on that this was a unique neighborhood. It was very peculiar. It was very special. It had a unique nature, unique houses, etc. So this location bound, and they also were a community that did things together. They had the cinema, they had the bathhouse that they ran together, etc. There was also value of being proactive rather than reactive. We are not just the ones who protest and react, we are also proactive in suggesting that build here instead of there. We're not just not in my backyard, the NIMBY activists, we are the proactive activists. And then we have the more digital media specific, social media specific values, that of connectiveness and responsiveness. As we have seen with digital media, it forwards and it affords connectiveness, and that you should respond as the logic of updating, as in Getty Park protests and in Indignados, how it's used for connective action in the sense that you spread information, then you need to be connected and you need to respond to information being updated. So these are the values, these are the positions. Okay, what about the habitus here? Because as you see, I'm interested in the position, how the positions in this field are negotiated through interactions between values, habitus, and capital. So these values are then in connection with the habitus of the activist. So what does habitus mean here? I think the most eloquent definition of it is by Andre Jansson and Magnus Andersson, who says habitus is a kind of luggage that gives the activist or the person a sense of knowing how to navigate the field. Here is an activist field, so it gives the activist a sense of navigating the field, knowing how to act, knowing how to behave in order to get recognition, get through the bus here on lines, etc. Knowing how to act, how to get attention, and how to organize. And here I found very clearly that the core activists had often a background in the animal rights movement, for example, and some then having this luggage of knowing how activism works. Engagement in the non-profit cinema in the area was very important as well for this, creating this habitus, as well as student nations, student councils when they were young, scout movements. This general engagement in movements seemed to have created this habitus, which was in dialogue with this field, the specific value in the field, especially doing things together, for example, which was one of the value in the location-bound community. So it interacted with this. And very importantly also was a belief in change, which is connected to the value of being proactive rather than reactive. All the people I talked to believed that they actually could change things. And this seemed to be very important to be, indeed be an activist in the first place, but also being a core activist. They believed that things could change. Okay, so then, the core of this article is to delineate these different capitals out of this. And capital here, according to Bourdieu, is a social relationship and energy resource that exists and produces its effect within the field is being used. And what I could find here was, 3 different capitals. And capital is also used, having this monetary connotation because you can exchange it for something else. Here a core position. If you have enough capital, it can be used to negotiate the core position in the activist group. One of the so I found something that I call participation capital. You can clearly see this online. I participated in this event. Many of these statements that activists tweeted out or put on the Facebook. I was there. Look at me. I participated. So it seems by just displaying or pictures from the protests, look, here I am taking a selfie with the protest. So just being there, showing that you had participated, seemed to form some kind of capital that could then perhaps be changed into a core position. But we also see that a core position was very much dependent on whether you could engage other, mobilize action. So mobilizing capital is also very important, whether you could get others to act, to be engaged. So mobilizing capital, which is connected to this. And then I also delineate, there's one thing to mobilize people to join the group, etc. But it's perhaps even more interesting, and it's an even higher type of capital, would be if you could also get other groups to connect to the other activists to connect to the cause. And the example is how one of the artists used her artist friends in order to get them to be engaged in the cause. And here is the difference if you make people to connect, to support them on Facebook, to spread visibility on social media, and to engage in offline action, or I mean in action in general here. So I make a differentiation between connecting and engaging capital. So with this, I mean, I'm not very good at models, but I mean the editor of First Monday said this was a very good model, so okay. It apparently worked because he asked for a model and this is what I came up with. So recognition here is of course important, and here we have the social field of an activist demand, the Aspudden bathhouse. And here you can see that by using this, I mean collecting these capitals, which would then be used in connection with the habitus, knowing how to navigate the field, to get the core position. And here we also see that this here, connecting and engaging capital, is about also connecting to other activist demands in the group. Yeah? Do you agree? Are you convinced or not? Please let me know. I'm very interested in your critique. Okay, finally then, the Erling Kimport book. Yeah, this was very popular last year, and I understand why, because it gives some concrete advices and tips, especially for the group work on how to use social media. And the authors here, Jennifer Earl and Katrina Kimport, they talk about different types of activism here. They talk about e-mobilization, using online tools to facilitate offline protests, to mobilize in offline protests. Then they talk about e-movement. And in contrast then to social movements, doesn't require as long time activism as in social movements. It doesn't require that you have been working for a long time and have a shared extensive political background with each other. It's no longer needed because online tools, social media, offers inexpensive opportunities for organizers and participants to come together, to find like-minded. E-mobilization, mobilization offline action, one time for one type of action. Movement, which is a little bit more long run, but not as long run as it was in the past with social movements. And then e-tactics, which perhaps then cannot be connected to to movement, is more about signing a petition, a boycott online. So it's something in between mobilization and movement in that sense. So it's they define it as instances of collective action with varying degrees of offline and online components and varying degrees of affiliation with the social movement. So they call this e-tactics. So these are the three different type of activisms they talk about in the book. Another very important aspect in the book is the concept of affordance. And here they argue that social media have certain affordance. First of all, what is an affordance? Yeah, I think this picture is very good. That, here you can see that the door affords certain types of actions with the door. Either you grab the handle or you push it. And the same with technology. By its design, it can afford certain types of actions. You have a full definition on page 32 if you want. So, and when it comes to social media affordances, and here once again, these are very good to take into consideration when you design your actions for the group work. So they have 4 affordances here. Or 2 affordances with 2 sub-affordances, if you so wish. And one of the main affordances is that social media reduces costs for participation and organization. What do they mean by reducing costs here for participation? Well, people don't have to come together physically. Time becomes less important for participation. So time-space constraints are not as important online, so it's reducing the costs here. Also, the risk of punishment, loss of income, stigma, etc., to be part of a group, to participate, decrease. It's easier to mobilize activists who support the cause and create bridges, leading to flash activism, 5 minutes activism. These bridges I was talking about in my article from one group and another to connect and engage others. And can you take advantage of this when creating your solutions? Email, petition, bypass, etc. Makes it easy for participation, make it easy for people to participate. And on the other side, it also reduces the cost for organization. Scaling up is cheap and initial starting costs are cheap. So if you organize something and you get a lot of attention, you can easily scale it up online. And starting something up, setting up a page for a cause, for a petition online is very easy. The need of actual organization or actually decline. Is organizing without organization. Now, the chapter on indignados doesn't agree with this, so perhaps there is a debate here. They say that it's a different kind of organization, but it's not organization. But anyway, it becomes easier to organize. You facilitate connections and mobilization, expand the reach and speed of communication through connective action. It can spread very quickly to get visibility for a cause. The chapter on anonymous is an example of that. At the same time as social media makes it easier to collaborate and to produce things together online than offline. So it becomes more varied. You can do it alone, but it also becomes easier to do it with others, to collaborate with others. The second main affordance, according to them, when it comes to social media and for activism, is the ability to aggregate people's individual actions into a collective without requiring co-presence in time and space. That you don't have to be present together. You can be in different parts joining in a cause. And when it comes to participation, people can act, can join petitions, etc., actions without being in the same place together. The we-next stigma, the threshold for participation lowers. The vagueness of the others, as we talked about. The vagueness of the us becomes vague. The us become vaguer. So the stigma of being like, oh, I'm not really radical anti-fascist alpha one, but I do agree somewhat with they say. Here I can actually connect to one of the cause without having to embrace the whole identity of being an alpha, for example. So the stigma lowers. Collective action without collective identity. Well, this is of course also, Sylvain would argue against this, but what we could say here is that you can act without this strong sense of we-ness. Of course, you can still argue that there is some sense of collective identity is perhaps needed, or connective identity. And they say instead of talking about collective action, we should talk about coordinated actions instead. So it's about coordinated actions rather than collective actions. When it comes to organization, then co-presence, well, less people is needed when organizing an action. You don't need so many people to stage a protest as you would if you would have to organize a march. Organizing becomes coordinated, a coordinating phenomenon rather than a collective one. Leadership is less important, as we saw also in the Indignados chapter. Temporary connections, flash activism, you get connected, mobilized, and then you leave, becomes facilitated. Social media is good for finding like-minded. Sporadic, episodic, periodic organization will become more common. So these are the affordances. Very important to remember here is how people leverage these affordances rather than focus on the affordances themselves. So these are the affordances of social media. Then you can, of course, leverage this affordance and make it easier for people to act because of these affordances, which will be your own task in the group work. But still, people will have to leverage these affordances. So you have to remember this is about making these affordances easy. Using social media in order to make it people easy to leverage actors to leverage this affordance. So, in summary, then. The affordances of reduced cost for participation, reduced cost for organizing, reduced need for physical togetherness in order to participate in collective action, and reduced need for collectivity and physical togetherness in organizing are critical to understand activism online. So these affordances are critical. What they say, these effects of these affordances can be supersized or actually change the dynamics of activism. So this can either be used to make participation faster, wider, cheaper, but without changing the core dynamics of it. It can accelerate process, make it easier to find target audiences, circumvent government-imposed barriers, and they call this supersized model. But it can also potentially change the whole dynamics of activism, and they call this theory 2.0. Altering processes, and one would be that there is no need for central leadership. So the whole game play of activism is changing here. No need for collective identity. Once again, Sylvain would perhaps not agree, and perhaps not, I'm not sure. To act without being stigmatized is changing things. So you can look at this as a supersized or a theory 2.0 model. So their conclusion then is that social movement needed as resources becomes less important because of social media. So what will become more common is 5-minute activism, lone wolf organizer, flash activism, etc. So this is a critique of some theories and that they talk about in the book, and they also argue that this will lead to a new digital repertoire of contention. Okay, now I have to stop before I lose my voice. I hope this wasn't too quick. It was a lot of things to cover, and the circumstances are not ideal since my voice is not particularly good. But when we meet on Tuesday, and I'm gonna come even if I have a bad voice, do let me know if there was anything you didn't understand and if there is something you wish to talk more about in particular. So here, do email me Tuesday by 10:30 the latest, and only email me if you're coming to the lecture. And particularly, was there something you? I mean, I'm sure this was very quick. I had to do this a bit quickly because of my voice. So do let me know if there's something I need to talk more about, and perhaps there was something that you found particularly interesting that you would like to talk about. So do let me know. Okay, take care.